What's the haps? I'm Meroka, and today I'd like to give you my professional gaming opinion on Mind Scanners. This is a game I streamed the demo of with Alzarath and Tulkas for Ludonarracon not too long ago, so some of you might already have an inkling of what to expect here. Right from the off, it's very clear it's taking its inspiration from Papers, Please, albeit with a more cyberpunk bent, but no less dystopian. You play the eponymous Mind Scanner, a medical professional with terrifyingly little medical training, coerced into the role by the government after they kidnap your daughter. They would like you to go out across the city, named The Structure, investigate citizens the government has flagged as behaving strangely, diagnose any mental issues they may have, and fix them accordingly. You're given a variety of strange and exotic devices to hook your patients up to, each of which has its own kind of minigame associated with it. You get 200 units of time every day, which you must allocate accordingly between travelling to patients, developing new tech to fix them up, and then actually fixing them up. You'll start by scanning each patient. They're shown a Rorschach test-looking thing, and give you a description that's nothing like the random patterns you get to see. You then get a multiple-choice test to see if you can figure out what's wrong with them. Get 3 right, and you can make a diagnosis. Get 1 wrong, and you lose a bit of time and move a step back. It's the same kind of plot hole that Papers, Please and similar games had, where if the machine's capable of knowing you made the wrong decision, then what are you actually needed for? I think it's basically intrinsic to the genre, and you kind of just have to hand-wave it aside for it to work as a game. Once you've made your inevitably amusingly named, and totally fake diagnosis, you can declare them either sane or insane. If you pick sane, you get 3 units of currency, named Kapok, and they get to go. If you pick insane, you bust out the minigame devices and start your brain tinkering. The way this works is by eliminating insanity symbols from a track. There's a very basic press the button at the right time minigame that can remove one of any symbol, but it's slow, it's ineffective, and it breaks a bit more every time you use it, making the game ever incrementally harder. Then there's a dedicated device for each of the 6 symbol types. They're a bit more challenging, but they have infinite uses, and they can remove up to 3 of the same symbols at a time, so if you're strategic you can speed things up a bit. All the other doodads beyond the basic one take time and money to research before you can first use them though. Your patient has a stress meter and a personality meter. If you mess up a minigame, you'll stress them out, and when you complete one successfully, you'll drain their personality a little bit. If you max out the stress meter, they refuse to cooperate, and you'll lose the chance to finish your work with them. If you empty their personality completely, you'll reduce them to a gibbering mess capable of saying little more than their name. There's minigames you can unlock to restore personality points or de-stress them, but this obviously makes the process take longer, and the government isn't paying you to preserve their personality, only to remove their insanity. They pay the same either way. As things ramp up, the process takes ever increasingly longer to complete, but every patient only ever pays 15 Kapok, while the government demands 7 Kapok a day in tax. So you can see how the delicate balance between doing the right thing by your patients and getting paid so you don't get knocked off by the government plays out. Also in the balance, and I suspect you might already see this coming, are some diagnoses that are less clear-cut. There's one guy who thinks he's a rat and lives in the sewer. Easy. Insane. Stamp. Fix. Then there's a scientist who has intentionally made herself insane for a research project, and readily admits as much. I declared her sane in the name of science. She questioned my judgment, but thanked me and I went on my way. The next day I got a news bulletin that she'd tried to carry out her dangerous experiments on her class, and I got a fine. So much for trying to do the right thing. And then there's a little old lady that reckons a magic worm crawled out of her locket and up her nose and now controls her brain, which is kind of clear-cut insane, but also the quote-unquote worm is making her live a super healthy and wholesome lifestyle. If you let her go because it seems like it might be for the best, she goes on to buy a feast for everyone in the impoverished area of the city. So yeah, interesting shades of grey. And, again I think you could see this coming, there are the enemies of the totalitarian state. So-and-so has been exhibiting dangerous thoughts. You are to declare them insane and remove their personality. So, are you merely a weapon of the state, or a defender of the people? Also pretty obvious is Moonrise, the obligatory underground resistance group branded terrorists by the state fighting back against the oppressive regime, because a game like this always has to have an obligatory underground resistance group branded terrorists by the state fighting back against the oppressive regime. They of course get in touch with you very early on to recruit you into their ranks and help take the system down from the inside. They're the ones driving the story forward, though some of how it plays out seems a little confused. Right from the start you're told, if you work hard you can be promoted in the structure and get level 3 security clearance. Then our resistance pops up and says, hey, you know who we could use? Someone with level 3 security clearance. Know anyone? Oh, says I, a person capable of putting 2 and 2 together. That's my objective then. That's how I win. And then it just doesn't come up. You get roped into various illegal shenanigans, but never once is it because of your juicy security clearance. It just seems like they need a warm, rebellious body to do a job most of the time. So it doesn't feel as much like you're mind scanning to bring the system down as it is just your day job so you can pay the bills. Even the people the state would like you to take care of never come up again. You'd figure they would be a valuable asset to the resistance or something, but nope, you just get the warm fuzzies of not being a tool of fascism. You don't even get penalised for it. Your boss sends you a rather miffed message about how you didn't do your job properly, but you don't get fired or fined, you don't lose any time or progression. That's not to say I didn't enjoy all the little stories throughout, I definitely did, it just felt like most of them didn't really influence anything. So I played it again a second time around to see if anything different happens if you focus on working more heavily towards level 3 instead of working with the resistance. I picked up on a couple of things. The first is that the characters are pretty much random. There always seem to be a few characters that stand out as more important to talk to than others, but even those vary between games. First time around, the state sent me after a chap named Ahmed. Arabs in the audience, raise your hands if you know where this one's going. He's a terrorist, wipe his brain. He's actually not. He's an old friend of yours you haven't seen in ages. He was implicated in a horrible accident in which a cop died, but it wasn't his fault, and now you have to decide how to handle it. I'm not sure how to feel about this, because on the one hand he wasn't really a bad guy, and maybe it'll prompt people to think about the tropes touched on, but on the other, literally the only Arab in the game is branded a terrorist, which prompts some pretty intense eye-rolling. Anyway, Ahmed never showed up in my second playthrough. The consequence of that is that none of the characters ever can matter, because you're not guaranteed to meet them. The second, following on from this, is that your choices don't particularly matter at all either. Though Mindscanner seems to be touted as a game in which your decisions are impactful, the basic arc of things plays out in essentially the same way. All that really changes is whether you're making the events happen or watching the events happen. Even with that said, I still feel like there's a possibility I missed something. I unlocked 2 Chiefs from 2 whole playthroughs, so it feels like there could be a bunch more endings, which I'd also be interested to see, but it's not something I could really establish without investing a lot more time than I have already. It took me about 4.5 hours from start to finish first time through, which is both shorter than I'd expected it to be, and also probably about the right length. I think if it was 10 to 20 hours long, the same half dozen or so minigames would start to wear pretty thin. After 2 playthroughs, my appetite for more is pretty well sated. In my professional gaming opinion, Mindscanners hits a lot of the right notes to be a solid addition to the dystopian job simulator genre, but doesn't feel like it does much terribly new. Authoritarian state? Check. Resistance movement? Check. Slightly desaturated pixel art colour palette? Check. A soundtrack designed to inspire a distinct dread? Check. Stressful gameplay delicately balancing morality against financial demand against the clock? Definite check. I think it's fair to say that, like Papers, Please before it, the vibe it's primarily aiming for isn't necessarily one of fun, though the minigames and zany characters also mean it's certainly not joyless either. I also think somewhere in there's intended to be a thought-provoking look at mental health, our attitudes towards it, and treating it. But for me, that seemed to fall by the wayside, taking a bit of a backseat to all the anti-fascist stuff. I think it's entirely worthy of a look if you're a fan of the genre, but I won't expect it to be feted as pushing games forward as an artistic medium, the way Papers, Please was. Thanks, as always, to my lovely channel members, Weirta Tolkus and Silent Evan, for supporting the channel. If you'd like to see your name in the credits with them, consider becoming a channel member by hitting the join button below. Also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if not, feel free to leave a dislike instead. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.